Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this case answering some of the questions I get in Instagram. Mine is Fairfile308. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I try to answer the questions as much as time allows. It's not always the case, and sometimes they pile up quite a bit, but as soon as I can, I try answering those. But if not, be patient, or just try understanding that sometimes it's a bit overwhelming and there's just too much and I cannot answer it all. But one of the questions I've been asked quite a bit is, how much ammunition should I have stockpiled? And also a fairly common question as well is, how should I store that ammunition so as to preserve it as much as I can? Fair questions, and this is something that's very relevant to what we're seeing these days with the ammo shortages and prices going through the roof. Something that people, of course, are asking, and I completely understand why. One of the things that you will find in Street Survival Skills, my latest book, which is the one I recommend for this kind of preparedness, is, well, yes, here I answer one of those questions regarding how much ammunition should you have. My answer is pretty standard. So what I say is that you want to have at least 200 to 500 rounds for for handguns, and about 500 to 1,000 rounds for long guns. All right, so 200 to 500 for handguns, about 1,000 for long arms. So what's the logic behind it, and why is it that's pretty standard answer? Well, the idea is this, that a handgun, if you have your concealed carry license and such, is the kind of thing you would use on a last-ditch defense, and you're not going to be going through thousands and hundreds of rounds. It's very unlikely that to happen. So if you have a small stockpile and you're using it as little as possible, even if you get in a situation where you have to defend yourself, standard is like 3-4 rounds in an exchange where you're defending yourself. But let's say you go through 1 magazine, 2 magazines. How often are you going to be getting yourself into gunfights? You know, it's really not all that common for people who have to defend themselves and spend hundreds and thousands of rounds throughout their lives. Most people will go their entire life without even finding a single round in self-defense. People that have found themselves in that situation, it's barely going to be like a box of ammunition. Having said that, it's not just about the ammo you use for self-defense, it's also about availability and long-term and training, most of all. How much ammo do you go through in training? So even if you have like 5,000 rounds of 9mm, chances are that some people are going to be going through that in maybe a year or less if you shoot a lot. Sure, there's a lot of people that 500 rounds of 9mm ammo for their pistol, that's going to be lasting them like 5 years because they barely go to the range. Guys, let's be completely clear about this. The average shooter barely goes to a range at all. You will be likely if you find someone that goes at the very least a couple times a year. Now, that's not what you should be doing. If you have a gun for self-defense, you should take a serious defensive shooting class with a qualified instructor that knows what he's saying. I was just watching a few clips of instructor fails, how they actually end up shooting their students because they're just crappy instructors out there. Not everyone is all that well qualified, and there's bad instructors out there. You should keep that in mind. Look for someone with a good reputation, someone that people say, yeah, that guy is solid, he's worth going to a class. That's the kind of thing you want to look into, not just read some curriculum, which may be complete bullshit, by the way. Go for reputation. It matters. That's the way in which you end up with guys that, yeah, you're going to be learning something from someone that knows what he's saying. But minimum, you should have a class in which you're going to be firing what? 200, 300, 500 rounds, depends on the class, but that would be somewhat average, give or take. Besides that, you're going to be shooting at the very least a couple times a year. You should be training and practicing those skills. So ammunition will go by pretty fast if you train, and even more so if you train with more frequency. If you train with certain regularity, even a couple thousand rounds will not last you all that much. So if you want to have the bare minimum, you want to have a couple boxes of good jacket hollow point ammunition for your pistol, just make sure you don't end up with nothing, because this also happens. People that have just 1 box of ammunition, they go to a range, they shoot that, and they say, yeah, I'm going to be dropping by the gun store later on. They don't go, and it wouldn't be the first time that someone has a gun in their house and they don't have a single round for it. Right now, buckshot 12 gauge, this thing is precious. I think it's going like for a $1 $1 a round or something like that. It's crazy the way ammo has gone up in prices. So, you know, just be cautious regarding that. It's a good idea to have more because you're going to be using it eventually nonetheless. Ammunition lasts a very long time, and any shooter that's going to be practicing with a minimum amount of frequency, you're going to be going through it a lot faster than you think. Then with long guns, why is it it's usually recommended like more rounds for long guns? Well, the idea is that this is the kind of thing you have for self-defense on a very basic level on the street with your concealed carry gun. On another level, with your long gun, there's this idea of, you know, protecting freedom, you know, family and freedom, or country and family, that sort of thing. People are thinking of conflict, of warfare. What if there's a conflict with a foreign invader? What if it's a domestic event? Whatever it is, if you're going to be breaking out a long gun for long-term combat, you're going to be going through ammunition like crazy. This is, you know, the kind of thing that people that have been in combat end up realizing very fast. You go through ammunition very fast, and it's not just it's not just dumping a mag on your Glock. It is using the 5 or 6 or 7 magazines that you have in your vest, and then going back home and getting more of it, or going back to base if you're military and restocking with that ammunition. You run through that ammunition a lot faster in that kind of conflict with your long gun. That's why it's generally looked upon as, yeah, for my long gun, I'm going to be having more ammunition. Having said all that, my advice is work around your logistics. Be smart about it. Let's suppose you're a hunter and you use a double-barrel shotgun a lot because you just use that gun for hunting, for sports shooting, and you have somewhat of a similar weapon for home defense. Maybe you're stocking around 12-gauge shotgun, which is the smart thing to do. It's the cheapest, most commonly available, most popular caliber for shotguns. You're stocking up on 12-gauge. If you're smart about it, you may find around, like I covered in a previous video, like BBs. You know, 12-gauge BB. That's a pretty solid middle point for pretty much anything that you need a shotgun for. It's not perfect at anything, but it kind of, you know, it stands there in the middle. It's not buckshot, but it's the largest bird shot you can find. Of course, you can and you should have a variety of rounds for a gun like that. You should have your slugs, your buckshot, a variety of bird shot, depending on what is that you're looking at mostly to use. But you know, stock up on this stuff that is more general purpose in its application, that would fit more roles if it's called upon that. The same goes for long guns. If you're smart about it, you will have, you know, some, again, if you hunt with a certain caliber and you have different firearms in that same caliber, that makes sense to stock up more on that. But if you have a long gun that uses the same ammunition than your handguns, that makes a lot of sense as well. For example, if you have a big supply of 9mm, you may want to have a 9mm pistol. You may want to have a 9mm carbine. Those are a lot of fun. It's cheaper to shoot, and you're using the same ammunition, sometimes even the same magazines as in your Glock. That simplifies logistics a great deal. So you're stocking up on a lot of 9mm, right? And that's useful in both your guns. Same thing for your 357 Magnums or your 44 Magnums. You can use that in your revolvers. You can use that in your long guns for defense, for hunting. Just makes sense to think about all of this when working on your guns, the kind of guns that you will have, and how is it that you plan the ammunition for those. One last thing regarding that is, sure, buy as much ammunition as you can, but remember your local laws. There's likely to be some restriction on how much ammunition you may have. And even if you think there's not, I encourage you to check yet again, because sure, it's going to be changing by state, by city, but also look at things like your insurance. How much explosives is my insurance okay with? You know, can I have, you know, 500 rounds, 1,000 rounds, 10,000 rounds? Let me tell you this. I'm pretty certain that if you check your insurance, there's a point in which there's too much. They're not going to be okay with you having, you know, 10 pounds of explosive maybe, or 100 pounds, or whatever it is. There's likely to be a limit, so make sure you know what that is, just in case you're going over it. And you know what, maybe you don't fire a single round of these in self-defense ever in your life, but there's an incident in which your house burns down, which is fairly common, and because you have more ammunition or explosives stored than your insurance allowed, you lose out and you're not getting paid by your insurance. That would be a horrible thing to go through, but let me tell you this is the kind of thing that happens a lot more than people think. You're not going to be seeing any movies about that, but it happens, and it happens fairly often. So check all those before, check with your fire department, check with your insurance. How much is it that I'm okay with without crossing a line, either some legal restrictions, some codes that they may have, or something insurance-wise. Now, in terms of where to store it and how, the more common thing is go with these metal ammo cans. These are 50 cal metal cans, typically used by the military. These would be the best way to store your ammunition. These are metal. They have a rubber gasket. Humidity is not going to be going in, and your ammunition in one of those is going to be lasting for 100 years. It will last a very long time. So you want to make sure that the gasket is in proper shape, because if not, you can easily replace that. But even with those Rubbermaid plastic things, you can put your boxes of ammunition in those, and as long as there's no humidity, those will last again for a very long time, decades. It will last as long as it's dry, out of the sun and such. One of those rubber plastic bucket things, lid, you keep your ammunition there in a cool, dry place, and that's it. It's not all that sensitive. Ammunition is pretty good about it. Shot shells used to be pretty crappy because they were used to be made out of paper, and I've shot some of those, and I've shot some of those that didn't work because they were in some old farm, a lot of humidity, and they have swollen and they barely got into the gun itself. Some of them didn't even do that, and not all of them fired. Now with modern ammunition, plastic hulls and such, this is a lot more resistant, and metal cartridges even more so. Just keep it in a nice big sealed place. If it's airtight, even better, like your ammo cans, that's a good idea. And for something that's maybe in kits and such, you may want to check out using some of the food savers, keeping it like sealed in a sealed in one of these food savers, vacuum sealed. That's also a great idea for some of the ammo that you keep in different kits that are maybe more exposed to humidity and such. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this little video, got a few ideas, hope it made sense. Remember, my books, Street Survival Skills and the Martial Survival Manual, both are available following the links below. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell button so as to not miss any future videos. See you on the next video. Have an awesome day.